Sam Maiden is the political editor of news.com.au. Maria Kovacic is a Liberal senator in our Parliament House studios this morning. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
So, Sam, obviously this was a big election promise. The government had said this would be one of the first cabs off the rank once Parliament resumed, and so they're pushing that through this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting why they're bringing it forward to October. It was meant to start on January 1. And, time will tell. There's lots of predictions that it will have a bit of an increase on lifting prices. And this is obviously in an environment where interest rates are coming down. That's going to put the pressure on as well. And obviously it will mean potentially down the track more people to snap up those medium densities in houses and apartments in Woollahra that are driving your callers crazy.
But, just on that point, though, isn't there still a cap on this? It's up to $1.5 million, and you might not be able to get an apartment in Woollahra or Edgecliff for that.
That is a good point. And look, this is the point that Zali Steggall has been making, that a lot of these apartments are going to be luxury apartments in some of these developments that won't be accessible for first-time buyers. The interesting thing is there used to be an income cap on this. There's not going to be so much an income cap anymore, but there will be a cap, as you said, on the value of those properties, and that will differ from state to state and region to region.
Senator Maria Kovacic, what do you make of all of this? I guess the argument that's been made is that, well, this is, for Sydney anyway, this is all one housing market, and if you can get some people downsizing or moving, then that'll free up space elsewhere. And obviously, as you would know yourself, having written a lot of mortgages as a mortgage broker, the difference between a 5% deposit and a 20% deposit is pretty big.
Look, the difference is big, and this expansion of the home guarantee scheme, which we implemented in government, has one problem in its implementation with this government, is that we actually don't have the supply. So you're shuffling the deck chairs effectively without bringing in some more supply, and that's the primary thing that needs to be addressed here. The government hasn't been able to do that in any meaningful way.
Can I just challenge that, though, a little bit? Because I think a lot of young people, when they go to buy their first property, find themselves bidding, if it's an auction, up against a superannuant or maybe an overseas investor in the past, but often it's a superannuant, someone with a self-managed super fund wanting to invest. And actually, if you only needed a 5% deposit, that would make your bid far more competitive.
Look, the ability to enter the market is important, which is what this does, but it doesn't solve the entirety of the problem. We have another element to the problem now, which is that the government themselves are involved in the market by purchasing homes via the HAF. We discovered in the last parliament that, the government effectively was purchasing homes. They'd only built 13 odd homes and they'd purchased 300, so that there is another contender now for the same supply. It's not going to help young Australians meaningfully enter the market as first home buyers unless we have more supply. That is a given. There is no question mark about that. There's no doubt about that. That is an absolute fact.
Here's the Prime Minister speaking about it this morning.
What it does is make sure that we get more people into the market, and the full suite of measures that we're doing is about increased supply. More supply makes a difference for affordability as well.
And Sam Maiden, obviously there's been some criticism from the coalition of Labor essentially taking policies that the coalition had in relation to the protections, I guess, in the construction industry.
Yeah, look, I mean, there was a lot of gnashing of teeth from the Labor Party during the election about some of the ideas Peter Dutton put up in this space. They are now moving on some of those issues, and there does seem to be a bit of a light echo. The government was asked, Claire O'Neill was asked about this in morning radio interviews on the ABC breakfast program about, what is going to be in place in terms of protections for consumers. There's a long history of terrifying events, including the Grenfell fires. She is adamant that they won't be, backpedaling on safety, and no doubt she would say that. But it is interesting that the government haven't criticised this within the context of the election, is now moving on some policies that look rather similar.
Here's Claire O'Neill.
What Labor's proposing here is a really balanced approach. What the Liberals took to the last election really threw the baby out with the bathwater and said that we're going to put quality and safety to the side. And that's not the right answer for Australians. We want Australians to live in high-quality homes, and that's why we've got the balance right here.
That's Labor's Housing Minister, Claire O'Neill, speaking this morning. Sam Maiden is here from news.com.au. Senator Maria Kovacic, based in Western Sydney. It's 19 minutes past 9. Labor's allowed a debate in the chamber today on Nationals' Barnaby Joyce's bill to repeal a number of laws related to climate change. Sam, first of all, what exactly is Barnaby wanting to do with this?
Well, I think that he's, in no small part, wanting to provide a bit of a stage for him to strut around and talk about these issues. And I suppose there's a bit of my enemy's enemy is my friend, because, the reality is that they're not going to get to legislate anything like this anytime soon. But clearly the coalition is hopelessly splintered on this issue, as it has been for decades. And I think that the Labor Party is in no hurry to basically guillotine debate on that one if it enables them to highlight those issues.
Maria, why is the coalition wanting this debated?
Each member is entitled to bring up a private member's or a private senator's bill or a discussion, or to speak about whatever they choose to speak about. We're very clear about what we want. We want to see a stable and reliable energy grid that provides affordable power for households and for businesses. And we want to see a reduction in emissions. We want to see a reduction in pollution. But we want that done in a transparent way, and we want to make sure that we do our fair share. And as to,
but if
conversation...
you want that, why would you want some of these laws to be repealed? Things like climate reporting statements.
Well, we want to see transparency in the way that Labor is going to deliver on their emissions targets. The reality is that under the current government, emissions have actually increased. So what we need to do is to get an understanding more so of what Labor actually is doing, what the costs of their policies are, and where they are really up to in relation to their targets.
And
Australians deserve,
let me
finish, Australians deserve a strong and robust opposition, and that's what we're doing. And we're going to hold the government to account in relation to this and have these conversations because they're absolutely necessary. And ultimately, Australians want us to have robust conversations in relation to energy.
Understood, but just on the substance of that, isn't climate reporting statements a really clear mechanism to ensure that there is transparency around emissions reductions targets, like the biggest businesses having to file statements that are audited that show what they're actually doing? Isn't that pretty integral to ensuring that there's transparency?
Well, I think what we actually need to see is a broader directive from the government of where they are actually up to, what they are doing in relation to emissions reductions, because it's clear that they aren't meeting those targets, and they have to answer to that. As I said before, having a stable and reliable grid, which is affordable, and reducing emissions is critical to that. They haven't provided the information that they should in relation to that, and we need to hold them to account on that.
But these laws that Barnaby Joyce is wanting repealed do go to the question of transparency to some extent.
And look, and that's ultimately a matter for him. I'm not going to reflect on, motions that he's putting through into the House. Everyone is entitled to do that. I'm someone that's been very open about supporting a clean energy future for Australia. I think we should continue to support net zero targets. I think that is something important. I think most Australians support that. And ultimately, we need to present an energy policy that works for our country moving forward. We can't be ideological in what we're doing. I think that it's important that we look at a grid that is clean, that is sustainable, reliable, and that it is as cheap as it possibly can be. And I think they're the key elements that Australians want to see us as representatives in their parliament delivering for them. And the ideology needs to stop. We just need to move forward and actually say, this is what we're going to achieve and this is how we're going to do it.
Tops of 20 degrees on the coast, 23 in the west today. Liberal Senator Maria Kovacic is here and Sam Maiden from news.com.au. Now, for anyone watching the TV news last night or this morning, lots of images of Susan Lee flying herself to Canberra. Of course, she's a pilot, led to lots of lines about political turbulence. Sam Maiden, do you have a better commute to Parliament House than flying?
I don't. I live about 7 minutes from Parliament House, so I don't need an airplane. And I think that if I did, people would have some serious questions about my commitment to net zero. Look, I think it's just an interesting kind of.
It's quite a powerful image for someone trying to establish herself as an opposition leader, isn't it?
100%. And look, she's battling in a situation where, they could sort of. They could fit their front bench in the proverbial Kia Carnivale. And so it's a good look. It makes her look powerful, makes her look a bit interesting. I'm not sure what the insurance companies would say about it, but good luck to her.
What's your commute to Canberra, Maria? Anything better than a light plane?
Sometimes I drive and sometimes I fly, and it just depends on circumstances. But I think Susan Lee is incredibly impressive. She's shown what a great opposition leader she is, and it just goes to the extent of her history and the context of who she is and the many different things that she's done and how she reflects many people in Australia. She's had many different experiences that have built her into an incredible representative for Australians.
Maria Kovacic, really appreciate your time this morning. Sam Maiden, see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It's 25 minutes past 9.